Duncan, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Why are projects like Horizon important to the UK?
Well, I think it comes back to the role that nuclear have played for a long time in the UK. We've got 15 operating reactors today. They've served us well over more than 30 years. But obviously there's a finite life there, and everyone understands that. So it's long been the case that replacing nuclear with nuclear makes a lot of sense. And of course there's lots of other technologies available emission-free, but nuclear has always been the bedrock of our system, and if we want to keep it the same, at least the same, then we have to replace these aging plants.
Obviously work was unfortunately suspended in January. What are the current options?
Well, obviously we had spent a lot of money developing the project to the stage it was at, and it wasn't we had any problems technically or with the site. It was simply a matter of we had exhausted our funding capability without some certainty on a transaction. And we just could not see a way to solve it within the current environment. There wasn't an investable model. And so at that point, we understood together with government, to be honest. We considered it together what was possible. And we took a view that until a new funding model was available, we had to suspend the project, not exit. That's important to say that. Some people, I think, overstated our position, but basically we couldn't keep spending at the rate we were without a certainty of a transaction. And since we couldn't see a funding model, it would have made no sense to continue at that rate of spend. So we have cut back significantly, but we didn't withdraw, and we kept our planning approvals going because we think those are important foundational elements to the site. You know, the community support, the regulatory approvals, they are important things for any investor to see should funding become available.
What are the challenges of building new nuclear in the UK?
Well, you know, quite honestly, some of it's nuclear specific and some of it's large capital projects, you know, 8 years of sucking capital in without any return. That's not attractive to many of the institutional investors. You know, the sort of people who invest in big infrastructure are typically pension plans and the like. And of course they have annual pension liabilities. So the idea they could put large volumes of capital into a project, even though it might be a healthy return, but you don't see that return for a significant period of time, it's a big disincentive. And obviously there is a nuclear element to it in terms of the risk of cost overruns, and the impact that might have on your investment return. So risk allocation is a big issue for that. And then of course thirdly, there are those risks which are can't be allocated to the developer, the proponent. Those are political risks. There are other things that are all going to be priced in by investors. So some of that require the government support package, some of it requires a government assumption of those external risks. So it's a kind of pretty comprehensive thing. Large project specific, nuclear specific, and external risks, all of which have to be addressed.
It's often said that nuclear is too expensive. How do you countenance that?
Well, quite honestly, I think there's a big focus on the construction costs right now at this point in time. But actually, when you look at nuclear operating costs overall, their marginal cost is pretty low. So it becomes an issue of the cost of capital. I mean, there's obviously a big capital requirement. We can't escape that. But how that capital is actually sourced and the returns expected, I mean, government can greatly influence the cost of capital, and it is the one single biggest contributor to the cost of energy. You know, a 1% change in the interest rate can move the strike price by 10 or 12 pounds. So some of these, I mean, they're not wrong to say that these capital projects are expensive. Of course they are, but they're providing power for 60 years at a very high volume. And so you look at the complete cycle. And I've heard people say, well, look how cheap renewables are. And that's a great credit to their pioneering spirit, but the reality is they don't offer the same product. Yes, it's emission free, but in terms of quantum and reliability, it doesn't compare. So it's not instead of those things, and I don't think we're trying to be price competitive with those. I think what we're trying to do is to be price efficient within our own lane, if I can say that. And some of that comes from how do you procure? How do you finance? How many do you want? You know, you and I can both agree that if I go and buy 10 of something, I'd expect a discount versus buying one of something. That's just common economic sense. So there are some things you can do to affect nuclear. But one of the things I'd tell you is most important is give the industry a view of the size of the market and let the industry prepare to service that, because that will reduce the cost. It just will. And then, of course, have a financing model that allows you to attract low-cost capital. We know we can operate these plants with a very high reliability. It's been demonstrated. There's 400 plus plants in the world, and we know that we can get north of 90% capacity factor from them. You know, I've ran wind farms, I've built wind farms, and if I got 25 to 30%, I was a happy man. But that doesn't compare to the reliability of nuclear. So we have to find a balance between those two things.
So what next for Horizon?
Well, obviously we're hoping that the RAB consultation will bring solutions to the funding model, but there are other things that can deliver that. Of course, all of us in the industry are waiting for the policy certainty that will come from the white paper. I worry that perhaps you wish for more than the white paper will provide, but the industry needs clarity. How many reactors are required? What size is the market? Because that allows us to think about the amount of capital we need, the sources of that capital, and the structure to obtain it, which, as I say, is currently being reviewed through the RAB consultation. Now, we've actively participated in that, and actually I think that our input is perhaps the most valid of all, because we have tested it in the market as we tried to fund our project. We can report exactly what potential investors told us they could accept and couldn't accept. We ourselves have, as a developer, have spent $2.5 billion on the project, and no investor is coming behind us to take that degree of investment risk. So we can explain the pitfalls of the current structure. I think we can articulate what needs to be addressed to make these projects attractive. And as I said, they're a combination of characteristics of large capital spend, such as the ability to earn a regulated return as the projects you're taking cash in, as opposed to waiting till the plant is commercial. The allocation of risk, the expected return, all of those things, every investor looks at those. And so, as I say, there are some things which are nuclear specific, but I can tell you, when I've talked to investors, seldom do they talk about concern about nuclear operating risk. They talk about construction risk and they talk about external risk, because we can present a pretty strong record of really good performance.
So there's hope.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was hope. But quite honestly, we might not be the prettiest girl at the dance, but we need to be there. That is the reality of it. I think it's kind of popular and attractive to talk about renewables, but if we care about an emission-free society, you can't get there without nuclear. You can do the math any way you like. Unless we're looking for some breakthrough technology which doesn't exist today, we need large-scale emission-free power, and that's nuclear.
We'll follow you with great interest and hope for the best. Thank you very much for joining us.
Great, thanks for your time. Thank you.